There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean Breathes Books. Welcome back to my channel and another book haul. I'm filming this on my iPhone and I have never quite remembered or learned where to look. So I may be looking in a funny direction, but well, you're used to me doing something a little strange in all my videos. So without further ado, let's get started. The first one is a Saskatchewan novel that was published just a few months ago. It is called A Simple Carpenter by David Margoshes. He is an American-Canadian writer, been living in Saskatoon for decades and decades. And I went to the reading of this, and I talked about it in a Friday Reads. Dave Margoshes is a good friend and writing buddy of David Carpenter, who I have a series of interviews with on my channel, and they've been in a writing group together for decades. And I joked with Dave Carpenter that Dave Margoshes named his new novel after him, but no, A Simple Carpenter, that's actually Christ, and that is a real turnoff, that it's a novel about Christ, part biblical fable, part magical realism, and part thriller. But apparently, not only David Carpenter, but also Sharon Butala say that it's Dave Margoshes' best work, and it's a crime that it hasn't been on prize lists. It's that good. So I'm going to try it. Well, I've gotten into the habit of reading the epigraphs, and there's 4, so let's get through them here. The first one is from Thomas Merton, Zen and the Birds of Appetite. One thing, and this is the most important, remains to be said. Purity of heart is not the ultimate end of the monks striving in the desert. It is only a step towards it. Paradise is not the final goal of the spiritual life. It is, in fact, only a return to the true beginning. It is a fresh start. Paradise has never been lost, and therefore is never regained. The next one from the poet William Cowper, if that's how you pronounce that name. I don't think I've ever heard it pronounced. God moves in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform. He plants his footsteps in the sea, and rides upon the storm. And a one-line, thankfully only one line, biblical quote from Revelations. And the angel spake, all will be revealed in time. And finally, from somebody named Lenny Gallant or Gallant, and something it looks like a poem called Peter's Dream. Last night I dreamed that I was sailing out on the Sea of Galilee. We cast our nets upon the waters, and Jesus pulled them in with me. So, I mean, all this churchy stuff, it's, I'm not sure, but it's not a Christian novel. The author is Jewish, American-Canadian, and it's, I think, pretty darn secular. Here is the opening paragraph of Chapter 1. Chapter 1's title is Fever. The blood in my veins sang and boiled. The sheets of my bunk were awash with sweat and other foul emanations of my body. I slept and slept, slipping in and out of consciousness. Through the haze of my own mind, I heard voices babbling in a stew of languages, their words clear and indistinct at the same time, their meaning incoherent. I heard the voices of men calling for their mother, the way a child would, helpless and devoid of bravado. I heard curses aimed at various gods, at poor choices and bad luck. And I heard the plaintive sound of men sobbing. Through that cacophony, one voice eventually distinguished itself and became clear, the voice of the first mate, cutting like the serrated fisherman's knife he wore on his belt. Come on, Carpenter, hold on. And while everything else was vague, in turmoil, suspect, I was certain of 2 things. I was Carpenter, Najar, though whether that was my name or my occupation I did not know. And I was holding on. Well, that's quite masterful prose, so that's for darn sure. Next is a British novel. So I can't remember what I heard about it that made me order it, but it is going to be featured in an upcoming video. I won't say any more than that. I got to keep you in suspense about most things, don't I? Falling Animals by Sheila Armstrong. And it was published in 2023. Oh, in fact, it's an Irish novel. I didn't even remember that. A writer from the northwest of Ireland. This is her debut novel, and I think I also have her second novel, or it's on my to-buy list anyway, which it's a little bit overly hasty. I should read this before I buy it. Sean, come on! It's about a stranger that shows up on a beach. Boy, this is my night for long epigraphs. Aren't you lucky? Okay, this is from a poet with a very Gaelic name, and I won't take the time to look up the pronunciation. I will put it in later. Elaine de Houlihan, The Skelligs in the Storm. "What am I doing here?" says the old strong voice, the wave reaching and snatching around the pinnacles, faltering and returning to fling its quilt across the sloping stone, where in the softer days the seal took a rest. So it wells up, squirting up roses in its fall, trying again, the awful repeated recoil. And where is truth? Under the slamming and roaring, it wants to know. And where is pity now? Gone below, wiped from the view, and indeed what has happened to time, as the day's news is repeated, bellowing like the storm. And next a line from Sir Walter Scott's The Antiquary. "It's no fish you're buying, it's men's lives." The first chapter is called The Collector, and here's the first two paragraphs. The first paragraph is one very short sentence. "First, there is a seal with no eyes. It is the spring tide, the beach is shrinking to a silvery half-moon, and the sheets of rock above the tide line are turning black with the unfamiliar spray. Out over the deep water, the dawn light is stretched out and thin. Only the iron tip of a shipwreck is visible above the waves. Further out, the tent pole of a lighthouse props up the sky, and from there, the horizon curves into a horseshoe, all the way around the world, and back to the dark anchor of the eyeless seal." It's another gorgeous opening. Editing Sean here. Well, the next morning, much fresher, I can see that there's a fabulous resonance between the Irish poem that was the first big long epigraph and that opening paragraph. Totally went over my head last night. As I think I've mentioned on a Friday Reads or two, I've been going out with the whole nuclear family, my sister, her husband, her youngest son, my mom, and we're cleaning stuff out of the farmhouse and wherever. And so there is an old hired man's suite up above the shop that was my summer retreat as a teenager, and it's also kind of the archives of our family, especially books and stuff like that. And it hasn't been well tended. Many of the books, none of which had any particular monetary value or whatever, but they were just kind of dumped there. Basically, we're throwing them all out. They belong to my grandparents. You know, if I look them up online, they're worth $2. Like, they're nothing, but they're in bad shape and dusty and warped covers and all this stuff. So I'm going through to collect anything that might be worth keeping, either from my own library or to sell or whatever, and they're just mostly just going into the garbage. Unfortunately, it's kind of sad, but what can you do? I haven't reckoned with all the school papers I have going back to grade 2, I think, that are all out there. But anyway, here's a book that did survive in pretty darn good condition. It's a hardcover, and the dust jacket is still on it, and it's by a British writer who I've never read. It's called An Episode of Sparrows by Rumer Godden. Yeah, it's in quite good shape. Belonged to either my grandfather Mooney or my grandmother Mooney, copyright 1955, and I see that this book is still in print, at least in a Kindle version. It's about two street children, probably in the war years or shortly thereafter, but I'm not sure about that. And here are the opening few paragraphs. The Garden Committee had met to discuss the Earth, not the whole Earth, the terrestrial globe, but the bit of it that had been stolen from the gardens in the square. The three members of the committee were the big gun, as Lucas the gardener called Admiral Sir Peter Percy Latham, who lived at number 29, the little gun, Mr. Donaldson, who had the ground floor flat at number 40, and Miss Angela Chesney from number 11. To Lucas, Angela was not a big or little gun, she was the gun. She ran the committee, she ran the gardens. And she won't let us have wallflowers, says they're common. I like wallflowers, said the Admiral, but behind Angela's back. When she was present, he deferred to her, as did Mr. Donaldson. Lucas looked only at her. It was like a court round the Queen, thought Olivia. Olivia, Miss Chesney, was Angela's queer, dark elder sister, who often attended her. They all stood looking at the holes, round pits of holes that had been made in the shrub bed at one end of the gardens. "It's the street children," said Angela. She did not mean any street, but the street that ran behind the square, down to the river, Catford Street. Well, I have to say that is one of the most beguiling openings to a novel that I've read in a long time. I actually want to keep reading that. That sounds wonderful. Right up my street. Excuse the pun. Next is a trans novel that was on my most anticipated releases for 2023, I think. Ponyboy by Eliot Duncan. And his pronouns are he, him. He's a US-born writer who lives in London. His protagonist, the eponymous Ponyboy, gets up to all kinds of mischief in Paris, Berlin, and who knows where else. Ponyboy is described in one of the blurbs as a melancholic trans boy. It's dedicated to all the boys who were first girls. I love that. Yeah, this was published in 2023. I didn't hear many good reviews of it, but I picked up a discount copy. And here are the opening couple paragraphs. The chapter's called Tony, Paris. Tony sweeps my hair off the gray bathroom tile and asks, "Do you know what it feels like to really make eye contact with yourself?" The tiny flecks make my neck and shoulders itch. I try and fail at brushing them off. I meet my inescapable form in the mirror, find Tony's gaze, and shrug. My eyes seem bigger, my jaw more structural. Tony's acrylics are goth elegance, a blue close to black, each nail filed to a point. They run down my newly buzzed skull. Tiny cold waves slosh down my spine. I smile, calmed by Tony's touch. I breathe there for a second, then scan down my torso. It doesn't make sense. I press down on my chest. I've always known that they're fundamentally pec muscle. I cringe at their indecent bounce and certain weight, the impossibility of hiding them. An inevitable symbol for recognition out in the world. My life sentence as woman, girl. Well, I found that incredibly powerful. And here is a Canadian novel I was very curious about before it came out, and I picked up a discount copy. It is an Asian Canadian novel set in Newfoundland. So, in fact, I'm not sure how far back this family goes in Newfoundland. It may even be the family, William Ping, emigrated from China to Newfoundland in 1931. Newfoundland, the British colony, didn't join Canada until 1948? No. Something like that. So it's a Newfoundland novel set in colonial Newfoundland and Canada, and it's about an Asian Newfoundlander family, which just really captures my imagination. I don't know if it's autofiction or what, but the grandfather or great-grandfather of the protagonist is named William Ping, and so is the protagonist, whose millennial life revolves around eating at restaurants and other fascinating activities. Published 2023. It's a chunky one, and I'm really curious. There are two epigraphs, and I don't know if the first one is fiction or not because it's attributed to the first William Seto Ping. I don't know if it's factual, but here it is. This is the kind of story my dad used to make up about people he never knew. But I met a professor once when I was young who had heard the same story about his family. So maybe there was some truth in it after all. Again, the first William Seto Ping, which probably is the protagonist of this novel. But anyway, the next one is a couple lines of poetry by Sir Cavendish Boyle. The poem is entitled Ode to Newfoundland. As loved our fathers, so we love. Where once they stood, we stand. Chapter 1 is called The Oyster Shell, and I'll read the first page. It's just a little white lie, she said, which struck me as an awfully charged way to describe the situation I was facing. All right, I won't tell them about Montreal, but am I supposed to bow or something when I meet them? Will, listen, you just let the elders order first, and eat first, and just let them do everything first. What about hugging? Do I hug? Or handshake? Is that allowed? What I want here is to make a good impression, you know, meeting her family for the first time. I already know what to wear. Black Timberlands to give my height a boost, black jeans, a white V-neck undershirt, and my favorite Patagonia Cinchilla pullover. A plain gray one. Looks smart and professional, yet casual. But I need to make sure that it seems like I know and understand, and respect, their culture. Our culture. Thank you, Poppy Ping. May you rest in peace. It's times like this when I wish my 1/4 Chinese DNA came encoded with some innate understanding of cultural practices. Well, that makes me want to keep reading as well. And finally, this was a BookTube darling a couple years ago. I finally got myself a copy. It's in brand new condition. I don't remember where I got it, but anyway. Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson, an African-American novelist. Oh, I found it at a thrift shop. How much did I pay for it? $5. It's brand new hardcover. Charmaine Wilkerson is an American writer who has lived in Jamaica and is based in Italy. Well, that's fascinating. I want to read her biography. It's her debut novel, and I think most of what I heard about it was quite positive. So, set in present-day California, a woman's death leaves a puzzling inheritance for her 2 children. And I believe the family is of Caribbean origin. Here are the first 3 paragraphs of Chapter 1, set in 2018. She's here. Byron hears the elevator doors peel open. His first instinct is to rush toward his sister and embrace her. But when Benny leans in to hug him, Byron pushes her away, then turns to knock on the door to the attorney's office. He feels Benny put a hand on his arm. He shakes it free. Benny stands there, her mouth open, but says nothing. And what right does she have to say anything? Byron hasn't seen Benny in 8 years. And now their ma is gone for good. What does Benny expect? She took a family argument and turned it into a Cold War. Never mind all that talk about societal rejection and discrimination and whatnot. It seems to Byron that whatever kind of problem you have in this world, you can find someone to show you understanding. And times are changing. There's even been a study in the news recently about people like Benny. Well, I will certainly give it a try. All right, that's my book haul. Which of these might you try first? Thanks for watching.